I'm hopeful that we can get done by 2 o'clock, so we're going to press through. I'm going to start back up with officers in the church council, and so we will get through that. I'm just going to read through. If you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, but I'm going to read through as much as I can. And as I told you during the break, I'd like to try to maybe explain a little bit more on the differences with elders, deacons, trustees, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, section 1, officers and the church council. The church council shall be made up of the senior pastor, elder, any minister serving as an associate pastors, elders, any minister serving as youth pastor, and all deacons. See section 2 of the bylaws. Out of this council of elders and deacons, the position of trustees, church secretary, church treasurer shall be filled. Deacons. The church council, excuse me, just a second. I think I left a paper towel that was right here.
It's to the left. To the left.
Okay,
To the left, there's a marker and a big towel.
to the left?
When you were standing at the window to your left.
Ah, got me. That way I can wipe that off if I need to. The church council shall have no less than 3 deacons who, under the oversight and guidance of the pastor, shall be responsible for the spiritual management of the church. The deacons shall be individuals of mature Christian experience and knowledge who shall meet the requirements as set forth in 1 Timothy 3, 8 through 12. All matters of church government shall be carried out by the church council except in the matters affecting the entire church body. In such cases, they shall present their recommendations to the church for ratification. You did start that, right? Okay. Section 3. All officers of the church must have been members for at least 6 months, be at least 21 years of age, shall have a record of faithful supporting the church with their giving, and attend the regular services of the church. Article 7, meetings. Section 1. Meeting for public worship shall be held on each Lord's Day during the week, as may be provided for under the discretion of the pastor and the church council. Section 2. There shall be an annual business meeting of the church, at which time the election of officers shall be conducted, and the report of all officers shall be read. The meeting shall be held the 3rd Sunday in January of each year, unless rescheduled at the behest of the members and or the church council, and set forward as soon as feasible after the target date. The pastor shall announce the time and place. Due notice shall be given on the 2 Sundays immediately prior to the date of the said meeting. Section 3. Special business meetings may be called when necessary, after proper notice has been given by the pastor or by the secretary of the church, provided the meeting has been agreed upon by a majority of the church council. Special meetings may also be called by petition, having been signed by not less than 1/3 of the active membership of the assembly. The petition is to be placed in the hands of the pastor or the secretary, and the announcement made on the 2 Sundays immediately prior to the date of the meeting. Section 4, quorum. No record of any special or regular business meeting of the assembly shall be made unless 1/3 or more active members shall be present to constitute a quorum. Section 5, the church council shall meet monthly for the transaction of routine business for the church. Time and place for such meetings will be announced by the pastor after consultation with the members of said council. All right, so that is Article 7. Is there any questions on the articles? Yes.
What did that say the quorum is? I thought I heard you say 1/3.
A quorum. No record, and this is section 4, no record of any special or regular business meeting of the assembly shall be made unless 1/3 or more active members shall be present to constitute a quorum.
Okay.
That's what it says.
What was the first Sunday of the month thing you read earlier all about? Something's going to happen the first, or a Sunday, the Lord's Day. Something like the Lord's Day.
Then we get together on Sundays.
Section 1, meeting for public worship shall be held on each Lord's Day during the week may be provided. So we can't have Wednesday nights, can't have a Tuesday night, can't have a Monday night, depending on how we decide to move forward.
Okay.
So, okay, Article 8, departments and committees. Section 1, Christian education. Christian education shall be considered as the department of the church, which particularly provide for the teaching ministry of the church and the spiritual care of the body. The pastor and the church council shall appoint the director of Christian education from among the members of the church. The pastor and director of Christian education shall have the right to appoint all officers, teachers, and other workers of Christian education, and, in consultation with the workers, determine all policies and programs. This falls in line with Sunday school. If we have Sunday school, anything dealing with Christian education. Section 2, youth ministries. Should a youth department be created, it shall be conducted as a branch of the church's activities. The youth department shall be under the supervision of the pastor and church council and any other person or persons that appoint to be leader or advisor. Section 3, other departments. As need arises, other departments or committees may be established. Section 4, relationship of department and committees of the church. All departments and committees shall be subordinate to the church and shall contribute, I'll get it right yet, to the harmony and development of the whole body. They shall be under the general supervision of the pastor and church council. The pastor shall be the ex-officer member of all committees and departments. Article 9, finances. All funds for the maintenance of the church shall be provided for the voluntary contribution of the tithe and offerings of the members of the church and made by friends of the organization. Offerings shall be accepted by the church at such time and in such ways as agreed upon by the pastor and the church council, and shall be administered by the treasurer under the direction. Article 10, property. Section 1, all property of Youmans Praise and Worship Center, Inc. shall be deeded to and held in its name. No property of the church shall be sold, leased, mortgaged, or otherwise disposed of without the consent by vote of at least 2/3 of the voting membership who are in attendance at a regular or special called meeting which has been called for the consideration of such proposal. The pastor and the secretary of the church shall certify in such conveyance, lease, or mortgage, the same has been duly authorized by the senior membership of the church. All right, that's covering departments, committees, finances, and property. Is there any questions? So
The 2/3, is that the 2/3 of the quorum or the 2/3 of the
Of the
total
church.
membership?
of the church. Of the
Oh,
voting
that's
membership.
serious right there.
So, Section 2, protection. In order to protect the interests of those who solely propose and providing or obtaining property was the establishment and maintenance of a sovereign assembly, and followed is agreed to. In the event that the church shall be affected by strife, division, or separation, so that the majority of its members become affiliated with some other organization, or in teaching and practice shall no longer uphold those statements of faith followed by this church, all rights of said property shall remain with the fellowship, which continues to function under the existing constitution and bylaws. Section 2A. In the event that the body votes in favor to cease functioning as Youmans Praise and Worship Center, Inc. by 90% of the voting membership, it has the power to do so, and to place said property with the affiliation of its choice. It is understood that Youmans Praise and Worship Center, Inc. owns said property free and clear, and has the rights to govern according to the will and dictates of the senior voting membership. Article 11, amendments. This constitution may be amended by 2/3 of the senior voting membership of the church in attendance at any regular or special meeting called for that purpose, providing due notice of such proposed change or changes. Shall have been advertised at all services on at least 2 consecutive Sundays immediately prior to the time of such meeting. It shall be understood that this does not apply to the statement of faith, which tenets, precepts, and articles stand regardless of the majority vote.
That's good.
What is a senior membership as opposed to just a member or senior voting member?
The senior voting membership is membership that stands in good standing in the church.
Oh.
You have that, and then you have the junior membership. Remember, that's the ones that's under 17. voting
Okay,
membership.
that's all.
The 90% of the membership
Uh-huh.
has to agree to that, right? Not 90% of the people that are there, 90% of.
Of the
who is on
voting
the board.
membership. And it says of the voting membership. It's not the ones that are attending a said meeting.
90%.
It's not a part of that. When you're talking about ceasing to function as Youmans Praise and Worship Center, which This church has been in existence for 75 years. It's a long time. And so that is, they do put that stipulation in there, 90% for voting members.
Good, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Bylaws. So we're now to the bylaws. Page 11. Section 1, corporate officers and their duties. And under the law of the state of Florida, a nonprofit organization must retain responsible person as functionaries. A, president. This is the chief corporate officer, the chairman of the organization, the person legally responsible for its conduct. Guess who that is?
Pastor.
That means I am legally responsible for this church. That's a heavy responsibility to take. Right? B, the treasurer. The person in charge of the finances, the one who, with or without assistance, collects and distributes the money associated with the conduct of the church business. C, secretary. This person is responsible for record keeping legally. This officer may be called to give an account of proceedings and actions undertaken during regular or called meetings. D, trustees. These persons are responsible for holding onto the church property. A minimum of 3 trustees shall be appointed by the church council in accordance with the will and approval of the assembly. These corporate officers shall be men and women whose duties and character corresponds with their spiritual office described below, inasmuch as the conduct of the organization is a spiritual as well as a legal exercise. Let me go on because we're going to get into elders, deacons, and trustees in this next section. Church leaders and their duties. The church leaders are those persons appointed to oversee the spiritual conduct, growth, and training of the church membership. A, the church council. The church council is the group of individuals responsible for leadership of the church and consists of the senior pastor, any ministers serving as associate pastors, elders, and all deacons and trustees. The membership of the church council are given to serve the church and therefore shall act in an advisory capacity to the pastor in all matters pertaining to the assembly in its spiritual life and in the ministry of its ordinances. They shall act in the examination of applicants for membership, the administration of discipline, the determination of which the church's pledged missionary funds shall go. A majority present at any meeting of the church council shall constitute a quorum, provided that all members have been notified to be present. In the event the church is temporarily without a pastor or the pastor is unable to be present for an extended period of time, the church council shall be empowered to provide for its own chairperson from its own membership in order to transact business for the church. 1. Pastor. The pastor is considered the president and chief corporate officer of the church, as well as the spiritual overseer of the church. He shall direct all of the church activities, taking into consideration the advice of the other members of the church council. He shall act as a chairperson of all business meetings of the church and the church council. He shall be the ex officio member of all committees and departments of the church. He shall provide for all the services of the church and shall arrange for all special meetings, conventions, and revivals. No person shall be invited to speak or preach in the church without his approval. His responsibilities are first to the Lord, secondly to the church, thirdly to those sharing his leadership, and finally to the world outside the church. 2. Elders. The elders are ministers who have been appointed by the pastor and church council to serve in spiritual matters. As elders, they are members of the church council and therefore work together with the pastor for the growth, spiritual, numerical, and ministerial of the church. As in the case of the pastor, elders serve with the knowledgeable consent of the church. 3. Deacons. The deacons are chosen to serve the church and therefore shall act in the advisory capacity to the pastor in all matters pertaining to the church and its spiritual life and in the ministry of its ordinances. Deacons also are members of the church council and have input in the council's decisions. Those deacons that prove to have the call of God on their lives in the area of spiritual matters and leadership may become elders at the approval of the eldership of the church. See section 3A and 3B and the qualifications below. 4. Trustees. The trustees who have the custodians of the church properties shall meet for the disclosure of their duties as needed, subject to the call of the pastor, who shall serve as the chairman of such meetings, trustees, and also members of the church council. 5, secretary. The secretary shall keep the minutes of the official meetings of the church council and of the annual special meetings of the church. He or she shall keep a record of the membership of the church and perform any clerical work required for the proper discharge of his or her duties. He or she shall be the custodian of all legal documents and be in possession of the corporate seal of the church as no official attorney. If the church retains any permanent official legal representative, that person shall keep the corporate seal. 6, treasurer. The treasurer shall be entrusted with all the finances of the church, which may be committed to him or her. He or she shall deposit funds, all funds in a responsible bank in the name of the church, and shall disperse the same by check or cash if necessary, as authorized by the pastor and the church council. Whenever possible, the person designated by the church council shall countersign all checks. The treasurer shall keep an itemized account of the receipts and disbursements. He or she shall make an itemized report at the regular meeting of the church council, and a summarized report to the church is required. His or her account shall be audited under the direction of the pastor and the church council. Okay, I'm going to stop there and just kind of hit some things. Now that I've read what the bylaws state about elders, deacons, and trustees, did that make more sense of what each position holds?
It's a lot of
Michael.
information.
Let's look at it here.
I'll be impressed. Okay.
I don't mean to sound stupid, but it seems to me like all three of the words have a real similar meaning.
They have, when you're looking at the 3, that's something that this church has, and I went over this with the church council and I told them that there needs to be a more clear-cut definition for the different departments, because you need to understand what each is. And I'm talking to council as well as the body.
There's a lot of overlap, I think, though.
So,
Commonalities.
looking at elders. Elders are spiritual leaders of the church. So I am the head elder of the church. That is the way that the bylaws state it. As pastor, I am head of spiritual affairs. Everything that happens here, because my first responsibility is to God. That is my first responsibility. First and foremost, that's what happens first. Then it comes, secondly, to the church members. I am responsible to you to make sure that everything is done in a right way. And so being led by the Spirit in all of the affairs that are looking at it in a spiritual sense, that is what an elder does. So let's say I bring on Robert as my associate pastor, okay? Let's say admin. You're going to be the administrator and you're going to help me in the executive pastor role. Then what that is going to do, he would be an elder of the church, because he has been brought into a position as an associate pastor. That's where an elder falls in. An elder is responsible for the spiritual, numerical, those type of things in growth, but he's working with me in his spiritual capacity. He's got that ability. He's been in ministry. He's been called to ministry. And so because of that calling, and because he's working here with me and as an associate, then that is where he would fall as an elder.
And those are appointed.
Those are appointed. Elders are appointed. Now, understand that the church council, I would bring them before. Anybody that I'm going to bring in this leadership role would be something that the church council would understand. They're working in that position. But then also, the church body would understand too that they're working in this position. So if I had, let's say, we had a seniors pastor that was working with our seniors. We bring in a youth pastor. Well, that is an elder of the church, because they're in a position working in a department as a pastor. That's not the same as a leader, right? Mm-hmm. Just because you're a church leader, a Sunday school teacher, that does not make you an elder, right? You're in leadership, but you're not an elder. Just because you are a women's ministry leader, if you've not been called to a pastor, if you don't have that call for a spiritual leader, then you're not going to fall under the elder. Can a woman be called to lead though? Can she be called to be a pastor?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we've had demonstration of that before. So let's say that, using Sister Lori for instance, let's say as women's leader, she was called to pastor women. That's what her pull was. Well, then she could be an elder of the church, right? Because that is a calling of God for spiritual leadership. That's different than what we're looking at as deacons. Deacons is another level that we can see in the Bible. It's called deacons. Deacons are chosen to serve the church and therefore shall act in the advisory capacity to the pastor in all matters pertaining to the church and its spiritual life and the ministry of its ordinances. So deacons can be called to be leaders, spiritual leaders of the church, separate from elders, because elders are primarily for the spiritual development. They're teaching those things. A deacon doesn't mean that you have to be a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. A deacon can be somebody that is just called to serve in the administration of the church. They have demonstrated that they have yielded their life to Christ, that they have the ordinances working in them, and they're helping in putting together the ordinances. Let's say that the deacon's board is helping with putting on the baptism of the church, the communion, getting communion ready for Sundays. Those would fall in line with deacons. Is that the administration of an elder? No. An elder would be somebody, let's say that we're called to prayer at the end of service, and so people are coming up to be prayed for, and I've got the elders of the church up in the front laying hands and praying for people. That's elders.
Yeah.
That's not deacons.
Brother Joe, didn't Stephen clarify this by someone saying, hey, we can't wait on the tables, so we're going to create a new group called deacons to lighten the load of the elders and the preachers so that they serve in a ministerial capacity to do the separate division of labor from the elders, which are doing the other half, the spiritual part. That would be the definition there.
Yeah, I mean, because it's something that these are helping elders. They're helping in administration. Because like I said, if you're preparing for communion, you've got those that are taking the communion out to the congregation and handing those things out. Those things can be deacons. They're helping with the administration of the spiritual, looking at the spiritual life and ministry of the ordinances of the church. Deacons can also serve on the church council because the church council is looking after the welfare of the church. You can have elders doing that too, serving on the council of the church because they're looking after the spiritual life of the church and helping in that capacity. You can have deacons that are doing the same thing. Okay? So you're right in the fact that it kind of has some similarities, but this one is called of God to minister to people. This is called to administration, to help elders. Okay?
What was the third group?
Then the third group is trustees.
What was the council? How is that? What that word means compared to these three?
Say it again.
Count the word council.
The church council. Okay. Now the way that this reads here, and we're going to kind of define this, I think, in the annual church meeting, because the limitation that they've had as far as membership here at the church, they've had to combine these two. So those that was deacons was also trustees, because we didn't have enough members to actually fulfill the roles. And so I've said that with Brother Cole. He'll change hats. Men's leader to council member to trustee, just doing all those functions because we haven't had the people here to take on those roles. These should be three distinct roles. These shouldn't be all the same. Okay? The trustee are the custodians of the church property. That's their function. That is a trustee's function. To me, a trustee is not on the church council when we're talking about the spiritual development of the church and making sure that everything is correct, where elders and deacons serve on that church council. The trustees would have a separate committee where we get together to talk about the maintenance of the property. If there is something that is not right on the property, that's the role of a trustee. So let's take Lucy Mays, for instance. Lucy May is the church custodian. Okay, with her, when she's looking at the need of supplies that she needs for doing her role cleaning the church, who's going to know that better than her? Nobody, because she uses it. So when we have a trustee meeting and we're talking about the well water and it being tested and we need to add more chlorine, who's keeping up with the chlorine, making sure that we're doing that, making sure that that's done on a regular basis because we've got to check it twice a week, we've got to do this. All of that is roles of the trustee. You know, making sure that the yard is mowed, making sure that it's edged, making sure that all of this, that's all the role of a trustee. Now, is that impacted by the spiritual life of the church? What's done in the trustee role?
Is that impacted by or
When you're thinking about the role of an elder and the spiritual life, and you're looking after the spiritual life of the church, is that different than a trustee?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you see the difference. How about a deacon and a trustee?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a difference too? Because these are called of God to look after the administration of the church and its ordinances. A trustee, I'm not saying that this is less important. I'm just saying that the role is different.
Right.
Because this is looking after and maintaining the church property. Okay? So we will have a trustee board that we will get together and talk about what's going on there. I'll present that to the church council if there's anything of necessity, like let's say that let's say you've got up and you're checking the air conditioning units and you see that there's a problem with the AC and we need to address it. And so you've come to me and you've told me, hey, we've got a problem, this is a need. Well, now we as the church council, we've got to address that need, that a trustee found that there's a problem with the maintenance of the property. Okay? That's where that's going to come in.
I'm sorry, what was the word council meaning in connection with these three? Just council is just a general word meaning anyone that's in one of those three can be on the council, right?
The way that this is put, there is elders, deacons, and the way that this is, and it says trustees, because of the fact that they haven't had enough people to really fill the distinct roles. And so you were finding deacons as trustees, and trustees as deacons. There really hasn't been elders here, okay? There hasn't been an elder board or anything like that. And this, looking over the bylaws, when we had our first council meeting last month, and I started posing questions because I've read through it and I'm like, okay, well, what about this? You know, there's some questions that really need to be defined. And that's what I'm trying to get done, is some defining of even like elections and appointments, which we can get into.
So you're saying the council only has elders and deacons on it, the trustees are not on the council?
That is going to be a separate council, is what the trustees will be.
Okay.
Because trustees, because we're going to have defined positions, I think that it's going to make it easier, like for trustees, because their function is really the maintenance of the property. That's their function. And we'll have deacons on the church council, we'll have elders on the church council, making the decisions for the spiritual life and well-being of the church.
Got it.
Okay?
Top two, spiritual maintenance. Bottom, church
Physical
maintenance.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not saying really one's greater than the other, because all three of these levels are very important to the church.
Oh, yeah.
So, and we have, as the church, have just been running simultaneous in between these and wearing so many hats, it wears people out.
Yep.
So the more members that we have, the more that are willing to step up and do, the better that this is gonna make it. And the more easy it's gonna make it.
Just one little question. If Brother Cole, for example, is teaching Sunday school,
Mhm.
he said, well, I'm not a pastor, or I'm not, and you said he's not a deacon in that position. It seems to me like anyone teaching Sunday school would agree.
Now, is that what I said?
No, it seems like you said the opposite, that he wouldn't be. And it kind of seems to me like that anyone that's teaching a Sunday school would be some sort of
He
elder.
would be in the deacon level, but he also serves as the church, on the church council. He's also the men's ministry. So, yes,
Yeah,
he
but I'm saying,
is.
but I'm just asking about teaching Sunday school. Teaching Sunday school is a very seriously important thing. You're overseeing people's spiritual welfare. So it looks to me like you would be an elder for that position. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think about these words all the time, but I'm just kind of confused. I'm just sort of,
Elders or pastors?
yeah.
A deacon is more like a helper
A
to an
teacher and a
elder.
pastor, oh, they're different?
The elder
Yes.
would have more authority, I think.
Hey, we need to keep time, an eye on the
Okay.
time.
You don't ask so many questions, Gordon.
Oh.
We keep him here all day.
All we need to do is just get the Klingon High Council in here, and that'll be the end of it.
No, what you can do is we're gonna get the paper and then if you have extra
Oh.
questions, write them down.
Yeah, right now.
And then
Yeah, get
go
back
one
right
at
now.
a
Okay.
time. I think it's a lot better.
Okay, it's cool.
We love you.
Who's your plate here, Gordon? Who's your plate for us?
No. What?
On the deacon board, on the church council right now, serving until January. January will be the time that we will ratify, and we're gonna get into appointments and everything, but right now, Steve Cole, Patricia Cole, Lori Gay, Stacy Jeffcoat, and Jermaine Porter, that is the ones that are serving on the church council. So that you know that. Jermaine is the church treasurer. Stacy is the assistant treasurer. Lori Gay is the secretary of the church. Okay? So that is your deacon board, that's your church council right now. And unfortunately, the way that it has been set up, they have also been the trustees because it hasn't been set yet. Okay? Trustees. Right now, our trustees are going to be and if I spell your name wrong, I'm sorry. Just, I'm going to say it.
Lascola.
I was spelling it right. Okay, that is going to be the trustees. As we said, that there's 3 trustees. So Steve is going to be 1, Al Gay is the 2nd, Lucy Mays is the 3rd. So that will be our trustees board. They're going to be maintaining the property, making sure that everything is done and up to standard and what we need to do. All right. This is our board, and when we go to vote, let's start with biblical qualifications. Biblical qualifications is required that the officers that serve the church are first of all servants of God. Furthermore, it is necessary that they be Christians of unquestionable character and proven maturity of abilities. A, for the biblical standards for elders, that's preaching, teaching, and ruling. See 1 Timothy 3, 2 through 7, and also Titus 1, 6 through 9. B, for biblical standards for deacons, that's stewards, servants, and helpers. You can see 1 Timothy 3, 8 through 12, and also Acts 6, 3. Now the elections are Article 2, and appointments and vacancies. Section 1, the pastor. He may be elected to serve for an indefinite period of time, or as may be determined at the time of election, with the understanding that, should there be a desire of the part of either the church or the pastor to sever their relationship, they shall be privileged to do so, provided there shall be at least 30-day notice on part of either desiring the end of the pastor-church relationship, unless mutually agreed upon, briefer period of change and adjustment. Should a vacancy occur, a prospective pastor may be nominated by the church council, by a pulpit committee, or by consent of the senior voting membership of the church. Election shall be the secret ballot after a season of prayer at the annual business meeting of the church or a special called meeting for that purpose. A 2/3 majority vote of all votes cast shall be required to constitute an election. However, the continuity of ministry in the church shall be determined by a simple majority vote. The church shall refrain from hearing several ministers before taking a vote, but after hearing a prospective pastor, a yes or no vote shall be taken, thereby lessening injustice to the minister. That's what we just went through in October, and that's why I was presented as a potential pastor to take on the responsibility, and then there was a yes or no vote. There wasn't, I know in a previous organization I was in, they would bring in 3 ministers, and then the church would vote. And it was very confusing for the church normally in trying to figure those out. And unless they took notes over every minister, sometimes they got confused about which one was who. And so that's why this is done on a one-on-one basis, and then a yes or no vote is done. Those active members who, for unavoidable reasons, cannot attend the meeting to elect the pastor shall be permitted to present their ballot to the church secretary in a sealed envelope, which is contained in an outside envelope, on which the signature must appear to enable the secretary to keep the proper record. They shall write on a slip of paper a ballot, yes, if they feel the candidate should be pastor, or no, if they feel the candidate should not be pastor, and placed in the envelope. These envelopes are to be opened by the secretary and approved by the church council at the time of election. Section 2, the secretary and the treasurer. These officers shall be appointed annually by the church council, and the church will be asked to ratify their appointments by a majority vote at the annual business meeting. They shall be chosen from the acting elders and or deacons, or the approved by the church council to become elders or deacons upon their appointment to office. The congregation shall have the right to ratify or reject the nominees. If those selected by the church council are not approved for acceptance by the senior voting membership, or the church nominates for said position, may be made to the church council, who will then take those nominations into consideration in making other choices. All selections shall be made in light of the Constitution and bylaws, with emphasis placed upon the biblical standards for leadership. In the event either office is vacant before the end of the one-year term, the church council may appoint a qualified person to fill a vacancy until the next annual meeting. Such appointments will be made known to the church, except for those appointments to fill a vacancy. The term of office shall be 1 year. Now, when looking at this for appointments, as I said, this is secretary, this is the assistant treasurer, and she is the treasurer of the church. These 3 are appointed positions. You're going to want somebody that knows what they're doing to work in the church office as treasurer. You don't want just anybody handling the money of the church, right?
Right.
So this is an appointed position by me. I bring it to the church council. The church council then votes on that person to make sure that they're in agreement with it. Because sometimes there could be something that is in the past that I don't know of a person that the council might know.
Yeah.
And if they bring it up and they say, you know what, Pastor, this is something that this person, they got caught in embezzlement in their bank that they were in 15 years ago. I mean, there's questions that could come up that we want to address. So the church council is on board with whoever is brought in as trustee and treasurer. Now, question I had was, since Stacy bears the title of assistant treasurer, that also should be an appointed position, right? I mean, because it bears the name of treasurer. It doesn't specify in the bylaws. So that's a question.
So where did they get the assistant treasurer then? Did they just decide at one point they needed one, so they started?
I'm wanting to know the role, the function of the assistant treasurer.
Yeah.
So we've been working on that to define roles.
Okay.
That could be a voted on position, but right now, the way I see it, that's an appointed position that would be ratified by the church.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be something that we would bring this up for a vote in January. This would be something that you're voting yes or no to ratify that they maintain that position. Okay? That's the same thing with secretary. That's the way that the bylaws read. The secretary is not a voted on position, it's a ratified position that you just ratify that they can continue on in their function as secretary. If the church on a yes or no vote says, no, we don't want her to continue on in that position, well, now we have to look for another secretary and we'll have to do something different because the church membership still has a right to ratify that person or not. Okay? Sister Patricia is not going to run again for office. She is going to back out, so we will have an opening there. Brother Steve will continue to, he wants to continue on in his position on the council. So it would be voted for these two positions and then ratified for these three, the way I see it. That's what we're working on right now for the upcoming annual church meeting. Okay? Does that make sense, or do you have any questions over that?
I'm wondering if that's what the initial thought process was. That way you always have people on the board who are aware, because it was, they're replacing the board every 2
Every
years.
year. No, every year. It's a one-year term.
Yeah.
And whenever I first read that, I'm like, you could replace all 5 board members at one shot. Now, we can have 5 to 7 on the church council. So if we do that on church council, which the council would consist of elders and deacons. So, we could hit the 5 to 7 pretty simple as I start filling out the elder board. We're not there yet, but I'm working on the elders, and I hope to have that ready for presentation at the annual church meeting. Then we will look at how our board for deacons looks, the church council looks going forward in January. So the first place that they're going to look at would be the February meeting, would be when they would take over, whoever comes into this slot, or if we change over in anything other. But the nominations for church council, I've always felt that it starts with me as the pastor, then it goes to the church council to ratify those people to make sure that they're qualified to be a deacon. Because I can tell you, in my 39 years of ministry, there have been churches I have pastored that people have been nominated to be on the church council that had no business even being nominated. They didn't have the qualifications to meet, to be a deacon of the church. And so with me, I talk to people, and I make sure that they're qualified before going before the church council. But there again, the church council might know of something about that person that they have seen in the church that maybe I hadn't seen, especially with me being new to the church. So it's good to have that going before the church council and then going before the church to ratify you still as members. That's why membership has such an important aspect of the church, because you have a voice in what happens here in the church. If you're not a member of the church, you don't have a voice, right? It means something. Standards of membership. Persons asking membership and service in the church shall have experience in the new birth and have received or by earnestly seeking the baptism of the Holy Spirit. I think I got through. Did I finish vacancies? Let me back up real quick. Let me finish up other offices. Any office may be declared vacant by an active majority of the membership of the church council at any regular or special business meeting. In the event any office is vacated, the pastor and church council shall fill the vacancy. Grounds for such action shall be unscriptural conduct, doctrinal departure from the tenets of faith, incompetency in the office, or for any good sufficient cause. C, an incumbent under charges shall have the opportunity to a fair and impartial hearing of his or her case before the church, if he or she so desires. Such hearing will follow and dictate the scriptures, and any discipline given will for correction and restoration, not for destruction of the office holder. Article 3, membership, the standard of membership. I just read that over a person seeking membership. It is also expected that applicant be baptized by immersion if they have not previously done so following their conversion. He or she should develop the practice of daily prayer, Bible study, personal witnessing, faithful attendance at worship, and observance of the ordinances. The applicant should refrain from worldliness, such as participating in activities which defiles the body or corrupt the mind and spirit, having inordinate lives, or preoccupation with pleasures, positions, or possessions which lead to their misuse. 3, manifestations, extreme behavior, unbecoming speech, or inappropriate appearance. 4, having a fascination or association which lessens one's affections for spiritual things. The member agrees to be governed by the rules of the church, to attend the means of grace regularly, as one who has opportunity, and to financially support its ministries as God prospers. It is our earnest prayer that God shall keep each member true to him, but if for any reason a member shall depart from the faith or cease to live a godly life or change doctrinal belief, the member shall consider it just to be automatically released from membership in the church. Section 2, reception of members. Persons desiring to become a member, an active member of the church, shall make it the fact known to the pastor, who shall examine the applicant according to the standard of membership. Those seeking membership shall participate in a membership class. B, the pastor shall present the names of those who are applying for membership with his recommendation to the church council, who shall act upon said recommendation and render a final decision. All persons who shall have met the membership requirements and have been passed on favorably shall be received into the church family at a regular Sunday service, and their names inscribed on the roster by the church secretary. Section 3, discipline. Any member of the church who shall willfully absent himself from the regular service for a period of 3 consecutive months, or who shall be under charges, shall temporarily be suspended from active voting membership, pending investigation and final decision in his case. B, unscriptural conduct or doctrinal departure from the tenets of faith held by this church shall be considered sufficient grounds upon which any person may be disqualified as a member. Section 4, members in good standing, who may wish to sever their relationship with the church, or who may desire to be transferred to another congregation, may apply to the secretary for a letter, which shall be granted on the approval of the pastor and the church council. Said letter is to be signed by the pastor and the secretary of the church. Section 5, the pastor and the church council shall be authorized to revise the membership roll of the church every 6 months, and to remove from the list of active members all names of those who may have been deceased during the year, together with the names of those who may have withdrawn from the fellowship, or who have fallen into sin and whose lives may have become inconsistent with the standard and teaching of the church. The following rules and instructions shall be observed as occasion may require. If a name is removed for cause, the one whose name is removed shall be notified by the action of the pastor and the church council through the secretary. If appeal is made to the church council for reconsideration for this action, and reinstatement is not granted, the dismissal member may appeal to the congregation. The action of the church by a majority vote shall be considered final. So, is there any question over membership or discipline?
What was the situation with Paul? He had a difficult situation, and he had to move around and couldn't always attend, and, just, I'm not trying to look for a weasel way out or anything, but, also, I don't want to say I'm a member and then have a responsibility that would preclude me from it. I don't want to be a cheater either. So Paul the Apostle might have been a special case, but there should be a way to look at his situation and see.
Anytime that there is anybody that has a question, that there's been something that's come up, that's going to be reviewed, and then there's going to be discipline that will be given. So it could be that they are called in and have a discussion with them to find out. If somebody says, so-and-so is living with someone, and so they're living out of wedlock, and this is bringing a reproach. If they're a member of the church, that could be a cause for a conversation. And if they're not living according to what's consistent with the standards of the church, then yes, their membership could be revoked at that time, There could be some things that, conversations are had and maybe they change the way that they're living. There's just ways of conversations, because it's not about destroying somebody. It's about, helping them to understand this is some things that can cause you problems in life. This is some things that can cause you, because if you're not lining up with the Word of God, and that's not the way that you're living, but you're proclaiming to be a Christian. I mean, what does Matthew 24:5 say? Many shall come in my name saying, I am Christ, and deceive many. How many do we know today that they say that they're a believer in Christ, they say that they're a Christian, but they're not living that life? That's a problem. So that's where sometimes in membership you have to see those things, and you have to have conversations. So that's what this is talking about. This isn't just talking about kicking anybody out, because that's not what we want to do. We want to help people. We want to stand with them and help them to be able to be the believer that they need to be.
What I meant was the opposite with Paul the Apostle. Was so many different places. Once he couldn't be in any one church, he was pressed down flatter than a pancake, and sometimes he was in jail. Not his fault.
Right.
And so I feel the Lord has spoken to me to take on these ministries to try to keep America from falling directly into hell. And I think that's an important ministry. I mean, we're about to do some very bad things, and I might just be able to work a miracle once again. And that would preclude me from being in church. And then plus, sometimes I don't feel up to snuff and I sleep, and I don't want to have my name on the roll and it would be I'd be responsible for there not being a quorum when something important happens. I don't want that to happen. I'm not saying that I'm Paul the Apostle, but hey, I almost volunteered.
But as a member, you're not just going to miss a meeting. There's going to be announcements that'll be given 2 Sundays before. There's things that are.
Maybe I shouldn't worry about the next day.
That's not something.
Maybe I should just do like Jesus said. Don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow.
There you go. Preach it thyself.
All right. Article 9, Christian Education. The Office of Christian Education Director, being an officer of high expectation and many qualifications, being more of a ministerial position due to a great deal of teaching and leadership that is required, shall be appointed by the pastor after thorough screening. The pastor in turn must gain the ratification of the church council before a person can be installed in this position. The pastor and Christian Education Director shall have the right to appoint all teachers and other workers of the Christian Education Department, and in consultation with workers of the ministry, and determine all policies and program of the ministry. Article 5 is youth ministers. I said 9, that was 4. Article 5, youth ministers. Should a youth ministries organization be formed, it shall be under the general supervision of the pastor. It shall be conducted as a branch of the activities of the church, and shall have the right to elect its own officers. Article 6, men's ministry. Should a men's ministry organization be created, it shall be under the general supervision of the pastor. It shall be conducted as a branch of the activities of the church, and shall have the right to elect its own officers. Article 7, women's ministry. Should a women's ministry organization be created, it shall be under the general supervision of the pastor. It shall be conducted as a branch of the activities of the church, and shall have the right to elect its own officers. Article 8, property rights. Section 1, all property, real or chattel, shall be taken, held, sold, transferred, or conveyed in the corporate name of Youmans Praise and Worship Center, Inc. Section 2, no real or chattel property of the church shall be sold, transferred, leased, mortgaged, or otherwise alienated without the same shall have been authorized by at least 2/3 majority vote of the church council, followed by the approval of at least 2/3 of the senior membership. Section 3, the pastor and the secretary of the church shall certify in such conveyance, lease, or mortgage that the same has been duly authorized by the vote of the membership, and such certificates shall be held to be conclusive evidence thereof. In compliance with the state laws, this is Article 9, Order of Business. The state dictates of a common parliamentary procedure. The annual business meeting of Youmans Praise and Worship Center, Inc. shall conform to the following order. 1, devotional. 2, reading of previous minutes by the secretary. 3, pastor's report. 4, report of treasurer. 5, report of committees. 6, unfinished business, 7, election of officers, 8, new business, and 9, adjournment. Article 10, amendments. The bylaws may be amended at any regular or special meeting, business meeting of the church by 2/3 vote of the church membership present. Article 11, ordination. The church shall be authorized to recognize the call of God on those ordained by the Spirit of ministry, and may choose to affirm the call by ordination of such ministers into the gospel ministry and service. Article 12, miscellaneous. Section 1, marriage and sexuality. A, in general. Youmans Praise and Worship Center believes that God sanctifies and defines marriage in 1 Corinthians 7, 1 through 40. The following are the beliefs of this body of believers that fully submit to the infallible Word of God and His final authority concerning morality and the conduct of mankind. The term marriage has one meaning. It is singular, exclusive union of one man and one woman as directed by God in Scripture. For purposes of Section 1, man is defined as an individual who at the time of birth was of the male gender, and woman is defined as the individual who at the time of birth was the female gender. Can I say it is sad that we have to define that in our bylaws?
Amen.
2, God intends sexual intimacy to occur between a man and a woman who are married to each other. God commanded that no intimate sexual activity be engaged in outside of the bonds of marriage. 3, it is sinful and offensive to God for anyone to engage in any form of sexual immorality, such as adultery, fornication, homosexuality, bisexual conduct, bestiality, incest, pornography, or to engage in any attempt to change one's gender or disagreement with one's biological gender. 4, it is imperative that all persons employed by the church in any capacity or who serves as officers, members, or committees, ministries, teams, or volunteers abide by and agree to the statement on marriage and sexuality and can conduct themselves accordingly. We must do this so that we preserve the function and integrity of the church as the local body of Christ and to provide a biblical role model to the church members and the community. 5, the facilities of this assembly may only be used for weddings that adhere to the biblical definition of marriage as stated herein. These facilities may not be used by any individual, group, or organization that advocates, endorses, or promotes homosexuality as an alternate or acceptable lifestyle. This policy also applies to birthday parties, reunions, anniversaries, weddings, or baby showers, etc. God offers redemption, number 6, and restoration to all who confess and forsake their sins, seeking His mercy and forgiveness through Jesus Christ. And 7, every person must be afforded compassion, love, kindness, respect, and dignity. Hateful and harassing behavior or attitudes directed toward any individual are to be repudiated and not in accord with Scripture nor the doctrine of this church. I can tell you that about 6 years ago, number 5 was told that we had to have this in because homosexual groups were coming to churches and trying to rent the facilities. And when the church said we don't believe in homosexuality, they were turning around and suing churches.
Wow.
So that language had to be put in here just to keep us away from lawsuits.
There's,
Wow.
on Moody Christian Radio, they have I don't know what time it is
Legal
on,
minute.
they have a legal minute, I think Gibbs was the man's name. I don't know if he's any kin of the Gibbs family.
Gibbs. David Gibbs.
Anyway, I was always interested in talking about,
Well, this is something that had to be in here because of that fact, because there are those that will pursue, that want to have those type of services that we just don't agree with. So is it something that we might have homosexuals attend church? I don't have a problem with that. I do not have a problem with them coming into church. Now I can tell you as head of the church, I'm not going to have them in a leadership position. But sinners need to be here. And that, to me, if they're living in that type of relationship, is that any greater of a sin than someone that is living in an adultery relationship? I mean, sin is sin, right?
Yep.
And if sin is sin, and sin separates you from God, we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We all need to be in church so that God can make a difference in our life.
Brother Joe, I agree with all what you said, but what about Abraham's son Isaac had physical relations with Rebekah, and then they were considered married? In other
You're
words,
talking about a whole different ballgame. Yeah, you're talking about.
Old Testament
Yeah,
money.
you're talking
But
about.
we're encouraging, you want him to stay here, although he's taking his time.
oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't
We're right here at 2 o'clock.
I didn't mean to ask, I didn't mean
I'm
to.
glad that we were able to keep it close to the 4 hours.
Okay.
I hope that this helped you in understanding some new things. Being aware of what the church believes. So you have a greater understanding of that today, right?
Mm-hmm.
We love the sinner, but not the sin. We welcome people, but we don't endorse sin or.
And you know that there's the
appreciate
makeup, the difference of makeup, you know, where we've had that of the spirit, you know, falling into that third place and being able to understand that and what
This
sin
is
does
what I
to us.
always say.
So this has got us completed with our class today. So I'm thankful that you have been with me all day, and I hope that it did minister to you.
Thank
Hopefully
you
you
for
enjoyed
taking
the
time
lines.
to talk to us.
Just one little question, what role does the government play in marriage? In other words, as a church body, are we okay with marriage happening outside of the government, putting the stamp of approval?
I think that is a conversation you and I can have
Oh,
after
okay.
we
Can you
discuss.
ask some easier questions? No.
Okay, what was the equal?
The church can rent out the building
Oh,
for
no,
birthday
that-
parties and
you know,
stuff.
yeah.
Say it again.
It sounds like from that last section, that we had to add in there that the church is able to rent out the facilities for birthday parties and anniversaries.
If
Have
it
a
is
policy
something
in
that,
place for that.
yeah, if it falls in line with the biblical standards of the church.
Yes,
It
no,
does say.
within that,
But there is not, I haven't seen anything that defines what the renting is.
okay.
That is something I was going to address in our next board meeting.
Oh, yeah,
Because
because I'm
there's-
kinda curious about that. That seems like a great opportunity
To make money.
for the people of the church to have a place to have parties and could be possibly beneficial to the church. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, it's gonna be something we're gonna have to determine, because I haven't seen anything, any definition of what the rental is or how that
Right.
works.
Okay, alright, thanks.
All right. If you don't mind, would you stop the recording?